hello everybody and welcome to a new episode of the Indie Diarist podcast, a show on the human stories behind indie game development. This is your loyal Indie Diarist and host, Anthony L. Wolf, writer, narrative designer, and senior content manager in social media, as you guys already know by now. And today with me is an amazing guest from the indie game development community as usual. His name is Sheldon, also known as CyrusTheVirus online. But before we dive into the episode, of course, as usual, I want to shout out to my amazing Patreons who are Feinoko, Zagini, Fishpump Dev, and Peleg. You guys are incredible, and I love having your support every single month. You're a very special part of the Indie Diarist community. Thank you so much. And listeners, if you too want to support the show somehow, you can go to patreon.com/theindiediarist or head to the description of the episode where you'll find all the links to support the show. And my tiers start from as little as £1.25 per month, and they include anything from, access to episodes in advance and even access to an exclusive archive of uncut video versions of each episode on YouTube. But yeah, without further ado, let's go straight into the episode. Indie Diary number 47 with Sheldon, CyrusTheVirus. Hello everybody and welcome to a new episode of the Indie Diarist podcast, a show on the human stories behind indie game development. And today I've got another amazing guest from the indie game development community. His name is Sheldon, but he also goes by the name of CyrusTheVirus? Sorry.
Yep.
So CyrusTheVirus Studios. And so I'll just hand it over to you, Sheldon. Just tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, what you do, where you're based, and most importantly, what you're working on right now.
Great. Thanks, Anthony, and thanks for having me on. Super excited. Love the podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah, my name's Sheldon. I run I'm a solo dev, and I run the company CyrusTheVirus Studios. I'm based out of Seattle, Washington. And my current project is a action adventure game called Cold Lazarus. It's a hand-drawn cartoon fantasy epic, as I would describe it. Very much an Odyssey game. It's got the elements of a Metroidvania, platformer, puzzler, but the real charm to the game, I would say, is the characters and the story as you progress through it.
Perfect. Yeah.
So yeah. Real quick, that's
amazing. Yeah.
that's the game in a nutshell.
Having seen some images and videos of Cold Lazarus, I mean, it's definitely something up my alley and something that I would want to play. So once it's like out there ready and all available and whatnot, I will just jump on it right away, I think. I've also noticed there are some bullet hell or shoot 'em up elements to it, if I remember right.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so the core gameplay is a shooter, 2D shooter. Very much a bullet hell type experience, kind of like Cuphead.
Right.
But
yeah.
I wouldn't say as intense or difficult as Cuphead.
Okay.
It's the world is definitely more open, like a Metroidvania, as opposed to the single stages that Cuphead has.
Okay. Yeah.
But yes, the core element is shooting. It's got a simple upgrade system. So you're doing the bullets, you're doing the shooting. You have grenades, you have items. Some of the things you can do is like summon a giant teddy bear to come help you fight, or
perfect.
Summon a plague of frogs and
beautiful
decimate
stuff.
your enemies around you.
And I love you mentioned Cuphead because it's definitely one of my favorite games ever. So yeah, even more so, I would love to try out Cold Lazarus when it's possible. But yeah, and also you make me think about the fact that I would have loved to see Cuphead in Metroidvania format rather than all the different stages. Like, it would have been absolutely stunning to have an open world Metroidvania map with Cuphead. I think it still works as it is, of course. It's a beautiful game, but being a big Metroidvania fan, I think I would have loved that very much.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say that was one of the things when I played Cuphead was I wish this was more open, but
exactly.
Given their direction for art style, that would probably be a little bit more challenging.
Yeah, it's true. It's definitely true. Yeah. Right. Well, I always like to open these episodes with a little icebreaker, and if you've listened to previous episodes, as you said you did, you would know what this one is. But I want to ask this question to you just to break the ice a little bit. If you could be any game's character for a day, who would you be and why?
Oh man, it would be Link from The Legend of Zelda.
All right, yeah.
Um,
Uh-huh.
and that is strictly for nostalgia. Like that
Of
game
course.
is really Ocarina of Time specifically
Ocarina of
is
Time, yeah.
really opened my eyes to what video games could be, and I think that's true for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard
Definitely the
that.
first story-driven 3D adventure game that just kind of like I remember playing that as a child and just having no idea. My parents bought me that game, Ocarina of Time, and I wanted GoldenEye, Nintendo 64 GoldenEye. But my parents are like, "No, you can't play that game. It's too violent."
Oh yeah,
And
because
so,
Ocarina of Time isn't. But you
and,
know.
and, and so what they told me was like, "Oh, the guy at Target said this is a great game." So they bought me Ocarina of Time. Like, I don't want to play this game.
I want a
I'm like,
GoldenEye.
GoldenEye. Anyways, I popped that in. I started playing. I'm like, I was blown away. Like
Yeah,
I loved that game.
it
It was
was.
just
Yeah,
the atmosphere of that game,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
the narrative, the being able to go wherever. Because previous to that, I'd been playing Super Nintendo,
Mm-hmm.
and I loved games like Donkey Kong
Yeah.
on that. And it's very strict linear game, but then you get to Ocarina of Time, open world, and so to get back to your question,
Mm.
yeah, Link.
Link.
There's something about just being a sword wielding adventurer
Mm-hmm.
that gets to explore a fantasy type realm.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's beautiful. And
would
Ocarina
be
of
fun.
Time, that opening, that beginning sequence in the village, it just got something that's magical to it. So yeah,
Oh,
I
it
can I
sends
can totally see.
chills.
Yeah.
It sends
Mm-hmm.
chills down your spine,
It
and
does.
and
And the
uh,
music is
and I
beautiful
think
too. So
the
yeah.
music absolutely, and yeah,
Yeah.
Ocarina of Time, love it.
Perfect. Well, yeah. Then, as you know, this is a podcast on the human stories behind indie game development. So I always like to dig a little bit and find out about your story, as guests who come onto the show. And in your case, I'm curious to know. Of course, this will be close to the time when you played Ocarina of Time, I suppose. But what's your earliest memory that has to do with video games? You would say.
My earliest, so I remember getting the Super Nintendo. Um, but my biggest memory with that, and I had mentioned Donkey Kong.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I was real little. I was probably like 6 years old maybe. But I had a cousin who was much older. He was probably in his 18s, 20s,
Mm-hmm.
from Sweden, and he was visiting us. And I remember how good he was. He was so good at playing Super Nintendo.
Mm-hmm.
And so he'd be like, "All right, collect 100 lives at the beginning of the first Donkey Kong game.
Uh huh.
You could always jump back into the cabana hut and get the one up life, and
Uh
then you
huh.
could kind of
Okay.
play through the first level, and you could repeat it and just kind of start accumulating your lives."
Mm-hmm.
So my cousin, he'd be like, "Get me 100 lives, and I'll play, I'll
Wow.
play Donkey Kong." And so me and my brother, we'd sit there for like an hour,
Yeah,
just
like
doing the
grinding
first
lives.
level
Okay.
over, just grinding lives. But then we'd
Wow.
get to sit back and my cousin, and he would beat the entire Donkey Kong game, and it was like,
Wow. Okay. Well,
and
that's a
so that
nice
that was,
memory. Yeah.
yeah, I loved that memory. So yeah, that was definitely
That's a really nice
that
memory.
was a
I
fun.
don't remember what my very first memory that has to do with the video games is. I remember like a weird rip-off of maybe an Atari machine or something like that that my grandma got at a street market. But that was probably my first approach to video games. But I do remember my uncle, who's still a big video games lover, and he introduced me to them. So all those Final Fantasies and even Metal Gear Solid was playing at the time. I was a kid, of course. I didn't like Metal Gear Solid,
Oh,
but
yeah.
then I got into it, and yeah, it just started from there. So yeah, it's definitely one of my earliest memories, just playing games with my uncle, or
Yeah.
watching him playing games mostly. So yeah. Um,
And then, and then just another memory that stands out to me is when Nintendo 64 first came out.
mhm.
There wasn't really like internet and stuff, so you didn't really see about it. But I remember being a kid walking into like a Circuit City,
Uh-huh.
which isn't around anymore. but
Okay.
but see but seeing the N64 is on display, and then just being blown away with 3D graphics. Just
Wow.
like,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. It was a
uh,
big step forward for graphics in 64 as PlayStation was back in the day. I remember Super Mario 64 was just huge because one of the first
right,
structured
yeah,
3D
and
games
that
ever
would
made.
always be the game
Yeah.
on display at
Of
the
course it
stores.
would. Yeah. But yeah, so well, you told me a lot about the kind of games that you remember playing growing up, the Zelda, and of course all the others that we mentioned. And do you think those games, and you mentioned a lot of platformers actually, do you think they're having an influence on the kind of work that you're making now? Are you like making games for nostalgia, really?
Uh, I, Perhaps
Mm-hmm.
there's definitely elements that creep into it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I love Banjo-Kazooie. I
Oh yeah.
love
Mm-hmm.
Paper Mario games. So sometimes I guess I would describe Cold Lazarus as having the charm of, say, a Banjo-Kazooie and a
Mm-hmm.
Paper Mario, kind of the cuddly
Yeah.
animal characters,
Mm-hmm.
uh, the subtle humor that like a Paper Mario game has, or it's not taking itself too serious. Yeah, Cold Lazarus very much is drawing
Mm-hmm.
inspirations from that. As far as being like a 2D platformer, um, that speaks more to being a solo dev and trying to get a game done.
Yeah. Yeah, well, of course. Makes sense.
If I could, I would be doing uh, fun 3D adventure
Yeah, yeah.
fantasy epics, but
But you
solo
know,
developer,
it's what you
I
have to
gotta
do, yeah.
keep the scope in front.
Yeah, exactly. And still,
It's more manageable.
doing a Metroidvania like Cold Lazarus, which has all of those different elements, shoot 'em up and whatnot. I mean, it's already pretty sizable feat, I would say. So yeah, I
Oh,
think honestly, from
absolutely.
what I've
Yeah.
seen, it's turning out really well. So that's good. But yeah, so I'm curious about the moment when you realized that you wanted to make games instead of playing them, because I think that's always a magical moment for everybody. So was there some sort of aha moment? Was it recent? Was it just something that was
Yeah,
born?
I think there was two moments. As a child, always wanted to do it.
Uh huh.
Um,
Okay.
but I guess I would say I had two dreams as a kid. 'Cause one was a musician. Like I wanted to be a rock star, right?
Right.
And
Okay.
so at some point, growing up, high school into college, my dream of making video games had shifted into becoming a rock star.
Uh
So
huh.
I had spent my early career playing as a toured musician in like a southern rock country band.
Right. Okay.
Um, so that was a lot of fun. So I spent about 5 years doing that, and then after that, started working a regular job. I was doing like user interfaces for building automation systems.
Mm-hmm.
Not technical, not programming at all. It was more like drag and drop.
All right. Okay. Okay.
Um, I'd always dabbled a little bit in programming because I the video game thing always sat in the back of my mind, like, oh yeah, like it would be cool if I taught myself how to do this. So I was working that normal job, I call it normal, and I hated it. It was so
Oh yeah.
boring. And so finally, I was like, I had this realization. I was like, I always wanted to make video games. There's no reason why I can't teach myself to make video games. And so that's when I would say I had the second aha moment.
Uh
And
huh.
that's when I sat down, I started watching YouTube tutorials. I had my basic knowledge of programming. It was really bad.
Mm-hmm.
I managed to make a simple cell phone game. It's called Amazing Meatball. And
Okay.
I did some pretty impressive things on the cell phone game. Like it had generative levels. It
All right.
had stuff like, but fun. I don't know. It didn't sell anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's out there. I would
Oh,
say
but
it's a
it
good
taught
game.
you a lot of stuff. I'm pretty sure. So yeah.
It taught me a lot of stuff. Yeah. So uh, that was the second awakening for
Mm-hmm.
wanting to start making video games.
Okay.
And then, of course, I realized I didn't have the technical knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And so I ended up getting a degree. There's a funny story behind wanting to go back to college.
Right. Okay.
Um, but
So you
yeah,
went all
so
in, actually. Yeah, you were really committed to actually learning to make games at that point. and doing
Yeah,
it in a
so
structured way.
so I was making the games as a hobby
Mm-hmm.
and kind of learning Unity, touching on Unreal, and I was always had that I don't know, kept it as a hobby. And so at one point I figured, hey, I'm getting pretty good at programming.
Mm-hmm.
I should try and apply for a software engineering job.
All right. How did
so
that go?
so I'm looking through it, I started applying. And I get a call back from a pretty big company
All right.
to apply for a software, and I think they're doing like healthcare, it's something with healthcare. And so I go to this job interview. I don't know what to expect. Like I have no idea. Like I know nothing. I know nothing about the lead code
Yeah, of
experience.
course.
So I go to this job interview. And they're like, "All right, here's the problem. Go on this whiteboard and show me how you would program this and
Wow.
solve it."
Okay.
And I'm sitting there, I'm like, this is what I have to do for like I was so unprepared for that
Mm.
experience. I looked like such a fool standing up there on the little whiteboard. And I had this aha moment. I'm like, I don't know anything about programming. I don't know anything about how I would solve this problem. And the poor interviewers, they're looking at me and they're just like, oh my God, this guy. They're trying to be nice.
Yeah, of course.
And I'm sitting there like trying to do my best talking like I think I'd be a great hire for this reason and that. But
Mm-hmm, yeah,
they're
but
sitting there like this guy doesn't know anything.
yeah, no, of course, yeah.
So I left that. I had this moment. I'm like, I'm kind of getting through game dev. Like I think I know what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
But after that experience, I don't know anything
Yeah,
about being
you
a
realize
software
that, yeah.
engineer.
Okay.
Like, and so I was like, you know what? It's now or never. I'm gonna go get my degree, and so I did. I applied, got into college, cranked out computer science degree in 3 years, um, and now I work a great software engineer job.
Nice.
Not in game development though.
Yeah, but you still are able to do games on the side, so that's a good thing.
Right, and I don't know. I mean, it's always been a dream to work professionally as a game dev in a game dev studio.
Mm-hmm.
But they're having worked on indie games in my spare time, I know the stress and challenge.
Mm,
And I imagine I don't know if I want to step into
yeah,
that realm yet.
of course.
I like keeping
Yeah,
the
like you keep,
game dev enjoyable as a hobby, right?
exactly, and
Like
also
if I start doing that professionally, I don't know if I'm going to enjoy it as a
yeah,
hobby.
yeah, I see
But
exactly what you mean, and also you know what kind of year it's been for the industry. So I mean, probably not the right time right now to step into game development professionally. It hasn't been
right,
a
exactly.
nice year. So yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, hobby is fine for now. Maybe. I
right.
mean, I'm sure the industry will bounce back, but for now,
Oh, I'm
it's
sure.
just what it is. Yeah.
I mean, games. I don't think games are going anywhere.
No, games aren't going
I
anywhere.
think if
Absolutely.
anything,
Yeah.
the industry is just going to keep growing.
Exactly.
It's a
Yeah.
little down
Hmm.
now, but
Hmm. Yeah.
and then maybe in the future I'll start expanding. Maybe I'll try and join a studio.
Oh
But
yeah,
we'll see.
that well, if you do manage, wishing you the best of luck because it's going to be a nice experience in any case. So
the
yeah, it's
The dream is, of course, having a successful indie game
of
and
course,
then running your own studio.
of course, yeah. Well, you never know. Cold Lazarus has a lot of potential, so who knows? A lot of people might like it,
I
and then yeah.
Yeah, I think Cold Lazarus has incredible potential. Like I am very pleased with the amount of work that I put into this game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if I can make any kind of impact and then grow it into some kind of mini studio where I can have more
Mm-hmm.
more devs to work with, I mean that would be a dream come true. As I'm sure is with everybody on this podcast. I'm sure.
Well, and with your experience in either software engineering or game development now, because you've done a few games as you mentioned by yourself, would you say, based on everything that you've done so far, is there a particular some sort of like development challenge that has left a mark on you? Well, apart from that job interview, but any big learnings that you may want to share for other game devs specifically?
Um, Big learnings, it probably gets talked a lot about scope.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna try to avoid talking about managing your scope.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say leverage your what you're good at, right?
Yeah.
Try to find what you're good at and use that to your advantage, whatever that means. And I guess a better way to describe it would be to create. You can find a lot of creativity in your limitations, right? If you're limited by something, use that as an opportunity to get creative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, for example, I'm not the I wasn't the best artist,
Mm-hmm.
right? I would not have said art was my skill.
Yeah.
Um, and there's no way I could draw the things as is that you see in my game.
Mm-hmm.
Like the cartoon elements that I draw, they're pretty. They look pretty elaborate.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's no way I would be able to do that from scratch. So what I did was come up with a process to help me draw better looking things. And what that was just drawing the simple shapes and parts of a character
Yeah. Uh-huh.
and then putting them together
Mm-hmm.
to make more elaborate pieces of art, things that I otherwise never would be able to do.
I guess a lot of
Um,
artists actually give that advice, like think in shapes, and that's the best
sure,
thing you
yeah.
can do. So yeah, no, that's sound advice. Yeah, absolutely.
The next thing was, I wanted to draw all these things, and so I was trying to, what was the quickest way I
Mm-hmm.
could draw this while creating a unique art style.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, well, I can hand draw things pretty quickly, um, as opposed to go and learn some professional paint thing. So literally, my whole game is hand drawn shapes that I scanned into the computer, use Paint 3D to cut it out,
All
and then
right.
I just use Paint to fill it in and draw the
Oh
characters.
wow.
And I
Okay.
created this process where I had no technical skill in drawing
Mm-hmm.
or the big art software. And I've created a style that looks very unique, very filled, and it works extremely well and it works extremely quick for exactly what I'm trying to do. So the advice is within your limitations, try and find a creative the creative solution,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll
Yeah.
probably come up with something that works.
I like that you mentioned limitations because yesterday I had a chat with Villainous Game Studio, and by the time this episode comes out, that episode would have been out for a while. That they said exactly the same things. It's at one point I asked them a question that I will ask you too, which is about what kind of game you would make if you had a limited budget and time, and that comes towards the end of the episode. But what Mark, one of them, said was uh, I would just make a shitty game because without limitations, there's no creativity. So
Right. Yeah.
that was a really good answer. So yeah, I think you're definitely right there. I can see exactly what you mean. But I guess we're getting closer to the present now, and so we're getting closer to Cold Lazarus, and I'm curious to know what's the story behind it. Not the story as in the plot, but what inspired it. Basically, how did you realize you wanted to make this game?
I always um had these like there's a lot of science fiction elements layered within this game. And
Mm-hmm.
so I always had these I guess ideas for short stories, science fiction short stories.
Mm-hmm.
But Cold Lazarus, so it kind of I don't want to say it was like a build as I went kind of thing, because I always had this overarching idea.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say it started with knowing my limitations. One, what could I build as a solo developer?
Mm-hmm.
And that was 2D, because that would be the quickest to draw. There's no way I'm not making 3D models. That would be way too much work. So 2D.
Mm-hmm.
What would be kind of elements that I would be interested in playing? Well, I like platforming. I liked Cuphead, like shooting type things, and I definitely wanted it to be story driven, like a narrative driven game. Um, and then it really just started with coming up with the protagonist, the lead character, the blue bird that you
Mm-hmm.
see there in the
Yeah,
background. So
exactly. Yeah.
I probably spent I don't know how long just doodling different kinds of animals and like would this be good? Would this be good? And so ultimately, I came up with this bird and I came up with that art style design. And I was like, all right, now I can start focusing on filling out this
Mm-hmm.
fantasy world, but within it, utilize these science fiction stories that
Mm-hmm.
I've had in the back of my head.
Right.
And,
Right.
and so the game became this Odyssey adventure, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the game is very much filled with this main quest, but then there's also side quests,
Okay.
and the
Right.
side quests tell these various stories.
Various short story. Oh, that's interesting. That's an interesting approach. Basically, you made an anthology, but you turned it into a
Yeah,
game. That's really interesting. And if you had to like think about one thing that you wanted, you would wish every player got out of playing Cold Lazarus, what do you think it would be? Could be an emotion, could be feeling, anything.
it would be laughter. I want them to laugh.
Okay.
Like I said earlier, I wanted to draw a lot of the inspiration from Paper Mario.
Mm-hmm.
One of the because what I loved about Paper Mario when I played it was just how much it made me laugh at some of the dialogue and just charm of the stories. And so I really want the people who play my game to be reading the dialogue and then just kind of getting the humor that's tucked in behind everything, despite the seriousness of the overarching story.
Yeah, well, laughter and fun is always a good one to think about. I mean, we're in the business of playing and making games, I suppose. So that is something that everybody is aiming for. But it's something that a lot of people say. Like, I just want players to have fun because that's the best thing ever. I just want them
Of
to
course.
remember the game and remember it fondly because they had fun playing it. So yeah, and laughter, of course, is part of that too. Do you think so far? I know you're pretty far ahead in the development, but is there anything you would change about the development of Cold Lazarus, based on what's been happening so far?
Yeah, I would change all of it.
Oh, really? Okay.
The, so I started developing this game before I even went to school.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are parts of this game, design wise, just programming, that it is just so unprofessional and so bad that continue like working on it now, going back to old parts from back then, it's like, man, I had no idea what I was
Of
doing.
course, at the
So
beginning, yeah,
so
that's normal.
so working now as a professional software engineer for like a legit company and having the schooling background that I have now, like if I could start the development over from scratch, I would do it.
Yeah.
And there's just so much
I
that
guess it's a learning experience, though, isn't it? So when you're done with Cold Lazarus, your next game, you will just approach it differently, I suppose. Design, even in design or
yes,
just creativity from the start. So
yes,
it's what it is. But I'm sure with the next one, it will be a completely different experience. And in any
that
case, you learn as you went. So I'm sure you're fixing
yes.
things as you go. So
Uh,
yeah.
it's it's a whole bunch of going back, redoing things,
Mm-hmm.
and that's kind of what you have to do if you want the game to be good, right? It's like I'm looking back at old stuff. I'm like, I can't, in
Mm-hmm.
good conscience, I can't, in good conscience, ship this to anybody.
Yeah.
It's like, I'll, ugh, let's scrap it. Let's redo it. Let's do it right. But yeah, so
Mm-hmm.
the whole I've learned a lot.
Okay.
Like the experience I have now, the experience I have from Amazing Meatball, from starting this project, and of course I did a whole bunch of other projects in between this,
Mm-hmm.
small projects, because the burnout is real.
Yeah.
It's like you have to take breaks. Um,
Yeah. Well,
but
okay. I
yeah, go
guess
ahead.
that is a nice segue into what my next question is going to be, which is the most important, the one at the heart of the show. We've talked about making games for fun and making games for people to have fun. We've talked about you wanting to make games since you were a child. But why are you a game developer? What is it that drives you forward every day?
Why am I a game developer?
Mm-hmm.
It's wanting to create these worlds that I have in my head.
Right.
Like I have all these stories, I have all these visions. I think it just comes down to being naturally creative person. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've always loved, making music, for example.
Yeah,
Like
I can see it from
I
the
I
piano behind you,
I
and
like I want to create, and I could have been making movies. I could
mm-hmm.
have been a writer. There's so many avenues to create worlds, to create things.
Mm-hmm.
Just been an artist or a painter,
Mm-hmm.
although I don't know how great I would have been at that. Uh, but that's exactly why. Like I want video games allow me to create the visions, the stories I have, and I want to share them with people, and I hope people find them funny, people
mm-hmm.
find them enjoyable. If people can have some respite
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
enjoy something other than whatever other difficulties they have going on in life. If my game can help do that, I mean that's the dream. That's the goal, right?
And that is a great answer. And I love what you said about just wanting to create all these worlds you have in your head. As a writer, I can relate. I just have all these stories, all these characters, all these ideas and things. And to me, they just have to pour out on the page. They just have to spill onto something, whether it is, a story or a novel or a short film or something else. I mean, it's just even games themselves. It's always super fascinating to give birth and bring them to life. So I can really relate with you. And what is the flip side of that? As in, what drives you backwards? You think? What's your biggest struggle as an indie developer right now?
It is definitely the burnout.
Mm,
You definitely can get tired working on things. Uh, and also promoting.
oh,
The
marketing, huh?
promotion, the marketing gets a little bit depressing.
Yeah, I've heard that quite a lot.
It-
Yeah.
it's hard to get people. There's so many games out
Hmm.
there, and there's so many people. It's like I kind of have to take a step back. It's like why would people even
That's
give a crap about what I'm making? And they shouldn't really. It's
that's a good
like
approach.
there's
But
so many.
as there are
I,
many people making games, there's also many people playing it, so you can always find your audience. I think, which is yeah,
you
that's
you know, um, it's hard until I have the game out and I can prove that it's worth playing.
mm-hmm,
Until then, it's hard to get people to
of course.
pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
And so that can be a little depressing. Like making an X post or an Instagram post or something,
Mm.
and
Just
again,
yeah.
0 likes or like 1 like. You're like, huh, okay.
Yeah,
Or
I can
I have
see that. Yeah,
I have my YouTube channel, and it's I put all my time lapse videos. I
mm-hmm.
did that for a while, and it's like, you got like 10 views, and it's
10
like,
views. Yeah, well,
I don't know if it's
um,
worth the effort.
yeah, I can.
But
I see that. Yeah, marketing is a big struggle for a lot of developers, especially solo developers like you. It's just because you're limited in time and resource, and you just rather
exactly,
do the actual game than talk about it
exactly,
before it's ready. So yeah,
exactly.
I've heard that story countless times. Um, but yeah, we've touched upon some interesting topics here, including burnout and just the fact that sometimes talking about your game and trying to find the people who care can be a little bit depressing. Um, so I suppose you do feel lonely or discouraged sometimes as an indie game developer. What I'm interested about is how do you cope with that? What kind of advice would you have for other people who may be feeling the same way?
I guess the advice is remember that you're doing this for fun,
Uh huh.
right?
Yeah.
don't 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 have high expectations
Yeah, that's the most important thing.
for to make big money. Like you're not going to retire at the end of this. If you do, good for you, right?
Yeah. If you get lucky, that good for you. Yeah.
But but yeah, the key is remember that, like this is your hobby. You're doing it for fun. It's okay to take breaks. I do it all the time with Cold Lazarus. Like I will take a month off
Hmm.
doing something else. I'll take 2 months off. I will build whole new projects just for fun, small projects.
Yeah.
Yeah, just
Hmm.
keep yourself busy. Find other things to do. Like the burnout is real. The motivation will come back. You'll hit that inspiration
Hmm.
to do something else. And that's something else. What's also good about being a solo dev is even though you are in charge of everything in the game, that's also a good thing. You don't have to work on
Hmm.
what it is you're working on that
Yeah,
day.
you
If
are
if
your
you're
own
trying
boss. Hmm.
if you're coding, if you're doing a lot of coding and you're just like, I'm just so sick of coding, right? It's
Hmm.
go make a soundtrack,
Yeah.
right? Go work on music. Go go work on art. Go work
Hmm.
on try do marketing. Just spend a month just doing social media
Yeah.
posts. It's change
Yeah.
it up. Don't get discouraged.
It's
Remember, you're doing it for fun.
yeah, it's absolutely sound advice. Well, we're getting closer to the end, but this is a question that I'd like to ask you because, of course, there are a lot of influences that go into Cold Lazarus. So I'm curious, do you have any heroes in the industry, anyone, or on social media, any other solo devs or indie devs that you look up to?
I don't know if I look up, but I'm always drawn, and I think it's probably true for all indie devs. Is the big success stories like you,
Mm.
the Stardew Valley,
Yeah.
the Minecraft,
Hmm.
the Undertale.
Yeah.
Um,
The big
uh,
hits.
I'm always drawn to the solo dev story. Like even games like Roller Coaster Tycoon and
Hmm.
like these are all games. They're always good reminders. Is like one person built these games.
Yeah.
They were successful.
It's
They put in the
possible.
time. It is possible.
Yeah.
So I love those stories.
That's a really good point there. Yeah, and well, I only have a couple more questions for you then, and one of them will be fun, and you already know that because I spoiled it earlier. But before I ask you that, I wanted to imagine writing a letter to yourself. But let's say around the time you were starting that degree in computer science or programming or software engineering, I think it was computer science in any case. What would you say? Because I suspect that when you were starting it, you still had doubts like, is this the right thing to do? But yeah.
I would say computer science absolutely was the best the best choice I could have
Okay.
done. It opens up so many doors. It's not just good for game dev. I mean, the job opportunities are amazing. I love what I do now
Mm-hmm.
professionally for work. It's interesting. It pays well enough. Some advice for myself. I wish I would have got the degree sooner.
All right.
Um, but it's also because my time as a touring musician was incredible. So it just
Oh, yeah,
not
so it's fine.
possible.
Yeah. Hmm. I think it's yeah. Just saying. I suppose you would be saying this is the best choice of your life right now, and yeah. But honestly, I can relate with what you say. Like, I do have a computer science certificate from Harvard for their CS50 course. It was a super fun course, and when I finished it, I was like, oh man, I wish I did this sooner. Because even in high school, I already had a little bit of interest in programming, but it never kind of came to the fore until I was maybe 23 or something, which
Yeah.
was about 5 years ago. And by then, I'd already started my career in another thing. Not that I want to become a software engineer or a software developer, but it does open a lot of doors, as you say, and that is really important.
And I do want to add to that because I was self-taught for so long
Hmm.
before getting my degree. And I thought, being self-taught is good. It's possible you can do it. But what getting that degree did, uh, it showed me things that I didn't even know were there. Like I never would have even gone looking to find these problems, right? If I didn't have the school there to say like, hey, this is what you need to learn.
Hmm.
Like being self-taught, real like your field of view is very narrow
Yeah,
because you don't know what you don't know.
yeah,
And so
exactly.
to have someone there to teach you that is invaluable. So I'm very grateful that I made the decision to end up getting that degree.
That's really good advice. Yeah, I think you have a point there. A lot of people, a lot of developers, solo developers, have self-taught, which you can do, as you say, but also you do end up doing a lot of things that maybe are not optimal, that make you waste a lot of time, or they're not really well designed, and then they come for they come for your ass later, I suppose. So yeah. Right. So one last question for you, which is supposed to be a little bit fun. If you had unlimited budget and time, what game would you create?
What game would I create? So I love like the 4-player cooperative type games, like Deep Rock Galactic.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Like games, co-op games where you can play with your friends.
Love them too, if I had any friends, but yeah. Yeah, no, I get what you mean. Yeah, so something like that, you say.
Yeah, I love co-op games, especially couch co-op games. I think right, like me and my wife, like I love playing video games with my wife, and there's too few couch co-op games to really enjoy. So lately we've been playing Baldur's Gate 3.
Right. Okay.
An amazing co-op game. So if I had unlimited budget, it would be co-op. I've always had a fun idea, and maybe I'll still make it after Cold Lazarus. But I always thought it'd be a cool premise. I don't know if you ever remember the old cartoon show, Courage the Cowardly Dog.
No. Oh yeah, no, I do. Yeah. Of course, it's just I'm Italian, so yeah, I'm Italian, so it has a different name. But yeah,
old Cartoon Network, cartoon show about a dog in the middle of nowhere, and spooky things start to happen.
Yep.
And so I always thought a fun game would be like a 4-player co-op, like farming sim in the middle of nowhere, where spooky things start to happen. Cool, and you gotta fight against different odds and ends things. So that's the game. That's the game I want to make.
You know what? I don't think you need a limited budget and time to do something like that. Maybe after Cold Lazarus, you'll make it. It sounds like a very cool idea. So yeah, please jump on it.
That's my next in line game.
You know, there was an episode that I put out. I think it was the last one of last year, so the last one of 2023, and it was with the developer of Dungeon Golf. And no, it wasn't with the developer Dungeon Golf. It was with the developer from Yellow Dot Games, and he said that he likes to do only multiplayer cooperative games because he wants to develop things he can play with his wife. And what you said reminded me of him. And so yeah, maybe you'll make a game that you can play with her. That would be very wholesome and cute. Yeah. So
there needs to be more co-op games.
I do hope that you
do. Especially local couch co-op games. They need to bring those back.
Absolutely, yeah, I totally agree. But yeah, well, I mean, Sheldon, what can I say? It's been a lovely chat, lovely having you on the show. Our time together is almost up, but where can other people find you? And if they do, what is the best way to support you?
Best way to support me, follow me on Instagram, CyrusTheVirus Studios. Follow me on Twitter, or I guess now X, CyrusTheVirus Studios. I think just searching CyrusTheVirusStudios.com will bring you to my website. Okay. I have a YouTube channel, CyrusTheVirus Studios. So yeah, just follow me on one of those. And then, of course, most importantly, wishlist Cold Lazarus on Steam.
Right. Perfect. And of course, I will put all of these links in the description of the episode so people can find you and can support you in any way they wish to. But yeah, so I've thanked you already, but thank you again for wanting to come into the show. I can't wait for Cold Lazarus to come out, and honestly, I will definitely buy it and play it. It will be a nice experience. Maybe I'll bring it on my YouTube channel. We'll see. So yeah, that I'm sure that will be very fun. I wish you the best of luck, Sheldon, because I think you do have a lot of passion, and I'm sure you'll do some great things with Cold Lazarus and after. So yeah.
All right, thank you so much for having me. Like I said, I love the podcast. I hope it continues to grow, do well. You're doing great stuff. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. All right, everybody, and that's a wrap on another episode of the Indie Diaries podcast. A beautiful episode, and as I like to say, not beautiful because of me, but because of the amazing people that choose and agree to come onto the show. Thank you, Sheldon, for wanting to be featured. And yeah, it's been such an amazing episode with you, talking about Metroidvanias, talking about passions, and getting into game development. All of that stuff. It was just beautiful to hear. So, if you guys enjoyed the episode, please subscribe to the show or leave a rating. You can follow me on social media at the Indie Diaries pretty much everywhere, Threads, Twitter, Instagram as well, although I'm not too active there. But most importantly, you can go to theindiediaries.com, where you can find a lot of links, including quick access to the Discord server and quick access to the Patreon and Coffee pages in case you want to support the show. But of course, most importantly, if you are an indie game developer yourself, please get in touch, because I have available slots later down in the year, and I would love to hear your story and tell it to my listeners scattered all around the world, because I know there's always great stuff out there from the indie game development community. I'll speak to you next time.